people right now are at home, so it gives people a chance to at least be creative, be innovative. And so this one where there's a local medical innovations. Kenya reported its first COVID-19 case, leading the country down of the virus. And so this has seen at least the students in Kenyatta University, which at least has seen them innovate a ventilator which at least could help those that are really suffering so much from this disease. So these are just some of the innovations that have come so far. And at the Kenyatta University, students have developed a ventilator prototype to bridge the biting deficit. The 16 students from different faculties developed the prototype in under a week. You can imagine, just under this, how much people are getting innovative. So one of the students who is a 5th-year student says that they are optimistic the prototype, dubbed Tibovent, will be approved by the Ministry of Health as well as the Kenya Bureau of Standards to help save lives. So this is just some of the continue grappling with this issue of coronavirus. And even as we talk about innovations, one among them is also just students looking for ways to continue learning via the online platforms. And remember, even I speak about students and learning. Also been questions about KCP and KCSE students, whether their exams be postponed, because as it seems, we do to an end. But yesterday, the CS Judge Magoha dismissed call to postpone the exams. Of course, we'll be looking at that story a bit later, as well as other more stories that have been spelled out, well written in the People's Daily. Jane.
Now, the Daily Nation, as we start with the main story there on the front page, is in regards to the crisis, the ripple effect of this crisis that we are in. And that big question there, the headliner is asking, what shall we eat? What shall we eat is the big question on the front page of the Daily Nation today. And this is in regards to hunger as layoffs and economic slowdown begin to bite down really hard on the vulnerable in the community. That is the main story there on the front page, and also still pictured on the front page. That is the residents of Kibra here in Nairobi as they were queuing to register for food donations at the Deputy County Commissioner's office. This is from the past week, and their families are getting increasingly desperate following the layoffs and reduced economic activity in the country. And pictured therein, you can see so many residents queuing, just waiting in line to register before they are able to be given these food donations, which are set to kick off any time. And this story has been highlighted further in the Daily Nation. And when you just look into it, it covers 2 pages, that is page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. It talks about how families are sweating to buy food amid job losses and a slowed down economy. Millions of Kenyans have lost hope in making ends meet as COVID-19 pandemic continues to bite, and experts only say that the situation is yet to get worse. We should brace for the worst, given things are not going to be getting any better. And this is, of course, as a result of the slowdown of the economy and people losing their jobs. And pictured therein are a few people who have actually given their stories. We have one from Nairobi who is an Uber driver, a fishmonger from Kisumu. We also have a Miraa exporter, a kitchen steward from Mombasa. We have a casual laborer from Mathare and a boda boda rider from Nakuru who have given their stories right there in regards to how this COVID-19 pandemic has just turned everything upside down. And of course, still looking to see what landlords are going to be doing. Of course, the plea that His Excellency did make when he was giving his third national address on the 15th, when he was giving his national address, you know, the plea that he gave out to landlords to, you know, consider tenants during this time has also been highlighted. There's something that most tenants are really looking forward to, because not many have had the opportunity or the grace to, you know, pay less or not even pay in regards to their rent to their landlords. More of that story there on those 2 pages to just understand the situation that most people are in, with so many saying that they are not able to put food on the table. And this is for parents who are especially in the urban setup here in Kenya.
Moving on to the Standard newspaper, on the front page of the Standard, we have highlighted how Uhuru men have fixed Ruto. Quite interesting how this morning we are shifting gears into matters to do with politics. We have succession. Before coronavirus jolted and struck them, President Kenyatta and his deputy were bringing the internal risks and frustrations into public space with strange shows of anger. The Knights of Long Knives is back in armness, and it has all the promise of
Let us now have a look at what is happening on the Star. As we have a look at the first page on the Star, the title says Uhuru, Ruto, Jubilee fight, Registrar to rule. Ruto wing plans to file cases with political parties, dispute tribunal and High Court. We will now have a look at what exactly the Star is saying on that story. The top headline says, Registrar to rule as Uhuru Ruto fight over Jubilee Party's soul. The quote by Soy MP Caleb Kostani says, what happened in the falsification of the minutes by Tuju and the chairman amounts to fraud. Looking into what exactly has been written in the article, a sentence, the Registrar of Political Parties and Ritu will this week rule on the bona fide leadership of the Jubilee Party following claims of an attempted coup. Ruto has termed illegal the party's decision to make changes to one of its top decision-making organs. Remember, that is the leading story on the Star. I repeat, registered to rule as Uhuru Ruto fight over Jubilee's party's soul. In a tweet on Friday, DP castigated people he described as shadowy characters for making illegal changes on a time when Kenyans were focused on the war of the coronavirus pandemic. That is what is the leading story on the Star.
Now, getting back to the Daily Nation, still in regards to COVID-19, but now technology and where it is taking us. When we look at this story here on the Daily Nation, it talks about how different countries are using technology to tackle COVID-19, and it has sampled some few countries. And let's just start with the United States, where there is a 17-year-old high school student from Seattle. He's called Avi Schiffman, who is said to have developed a coronavirus tracking website. And that website has so far recorded over 500 million visitors so far, just people checking it out and trying to understand how it works. He's said to have refused advertisements on the website, which would have given him a nice $8 million, but he refused that all in effort. And he was actually quoted saying, I hope that, what I did inspires a lot of other young people out there to find ways in which they can help the situation. This machine is said to help the doctors when it comes to tracking the patients, and it does so by measuring their oxygen levels in their blood, that is, and it transmits this information. It sends signals to a wrist monitor that looks like a smartwatch, which then sends signals to their cell phone, and they are able to be tracked. And when somebody's having any oxygen deficit, they're able to be detected, and doctors can be able to intervene and come, or rather send help to where they are. When it comes to Israel, they say there's an Israeli cybersecurity company that says they have a technology that can map the spread of the virus in real time using individuals' cell phones and anonymous IDs that they have been issued with. And they're able to predict where the next cluster of cases is likely to be and when to move ventilators to hospitals that are going to be needing them in whatever region. Going to China, they are using robots to deliver food, medicine, and other supplies to all their patients and check the patient's temperature, clean surfaces, and also to answer common questions that the patients may be having when it comes to coronavirus. And going to Pakistan, they are tired of telling stubborn people to stay in. So what they did, they have now dressed drones like ghosts and are using those ghost-like drones to scare people away and keep them indoors during a curfew. In Italy, they also say to be using drones to track those who are violating the rules and regulations in regards to the lockdown, and bringing it home to Africa. In Rwanda, they are said to be using drones to communicate to citizens and educate them in the dangers on the dangers of COVID-19 and the measures that they need to take to keep safe. Those are just some of the countries that have been highlighted here. There's more about Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong. You can go ahead and read more of that to understand how technology is being employed during this time.
Well, on the Star, still looking at COVID-19, Kenya virus case jumps to 208 and more have been discharged. This is after CS Mutahi Kagwe announced 11 more cases yesterday. Still on the Star, I'd like to have a look at the Star survey. They give us a lot of insight on what is happening on the ground. Do you think the Siaya man should be reburied with dignity? Yesterday's question, should part of Term 1 school fees be carried forward? 45% said yes and 55% said no. Right next to it, national exams still on course, says Magoha, and there is a picture of Magoha during yesterday's press conference at Afia House. Highlighting on the titles of the page, just having a sketch of what is happening. Help Kenyans in China, urges Nyaga. Former Cabinet Minister Joe Nyaga yesterday expressed concern over the government's indecisiveness in handling Kenyans reportedly being mistreated in China. On the Star, there is a photo story. There is a street boy eating a banana he retrieved from his garbage truck in Kisumu town yesterday. Yes, we have a boy who is eating a banana which he has removed from the garbage truck. Very insightful. You could have a look at it. Still on matters to do with the Star. 72 arrested in Kiambu for drinking inside closed bars. 76 have been arrested in Kiambu for drinking inside closed bars. Jane?
Maybe we could cross over to the Standard newspaper before we get back to the Daily Nation. Agooks.
Hapa hivi kuna siasa. There is a lot of politics going on the front page of the Standard newspaper. As I was earlier mentioning, we have on the front page a splash there highlighted in the headlines. How Uhuru men have fixed Ruto's succession blues before coronavirus jolted and disrupted them. President Kenyatta and his deputy were bringing their internal rifts and frustrations into public space with unrestrained shows of anger. The night of long lives is back in earnest, and it has all the promise of a messy fight. How Uhuru men have fixed Ruto. And we have towards the left comments by Jubilee Secretary General Raphael Tuju, Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe, who now say there are claims that he is still the Jubilee Party Deputy or Vice Chairman. And we have below there, we have a comment by Nyeri Town Member of Parliament Gunjiri Wambugu. Specifically on the comment given by Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe, he says, Uhuru has a voice in all that is happening. What the DPP is panicking about is not the leadership of the party, but his 2022 ambitions. So, what is this all about? Well, this is in regards to the political party changes. Inside this, the Standard newspaper, we have how President's men are taking the succession fight to Ruto's corner. And also towards the right, we have you are on your own. Tuju and Murathe won the DP. Deputy President under siege as ruling party proposes new appointments. This is in regards to the new political party leadership changes that have been implemented within Jubilee. What next? That is highlighted on the Jubilee Party. But still, in regards to the COVID-19, we have inside the Standard, be ready for more unusual ways of life, warns Kagwe. That is in regards to the COVID-19. Kenya yesterday reported 11 more cases of COVID-19, bringing tally to 08. And in regards to what's happening in Siaya on the COVID-19 case, family demands autopsy for Keane, buried at 2 a.m. Night burial for COVID-19 patient raises storm. Deceased brothers says he did not deserve the heartless treatment. That is on the COVID-19 case in Siaya. And this morning, I will be having a discussion with one of the top leaders in Kemri, the deputy, and this is in regards to what Kemri is doing. We have invest in more hospital beds, warns Kemri. Is Kenya ready for a crisis? Researchers say the country needs more ICU facilities for a possible full-blown of the coronavirus pandemic. That discussion on Kemri will be coming up in a bit this morning in regards to how what Kemri is doing in the wake of the COVID-19.
Now, as we continue with the Daily Nation, before we get to cross on over to finish with People's Daily, here there are two main stories that I want us to touch on that are in the Daily Nation. And number one, this is in regards to a warning that has been put out by the Kenya Bureau of Standards. Now, here they say, think twice before you buy face masks from hawkers, and this is a warning from KEDS. The Kenya Bureau of Standards has warned against using substandard masks during this time, in as much as the Ministry of Health gave a directive last week to requiring everyone who is going to be in the public domain to wear masks, failure to which there may be a fine that may be imposed. They did warn that, in as much as wearing of masks is going to curb the spread of COVID-19, the use of substandard material is risky and quite risky for that matter, and we need to be very careful when we are purchasing masks. We need to ensure that they are of good quality for maximum protection, in as much as there is a global shortage of some of this personal protective equipment, and masks being at the center of this. So you can read more of that to understand what are these warnings that are being put forth by the Kenya Bureau of Standards when it comes to the quality of face masks that we are using. And of course, over the weekend, there was this meme that was circulating about how coronavirus is wondering, where is this that people wear face masks made of vitenge? Only in Africa. Now, quickly moving on to the county news segment. This is in regards to the locust fight. And from the front page of the county news pull-out segment here, it talks of alarm as locusts adapt and change the way they behave. And this was a change in behavior that scientists are warning about that could lead to the breed becoming more difficult to spot and predict as their habits change, which is said to be a survival strategy. They are now, being said to be hiding under leaves and changing their behavior changing their behaviors in terms of dispersing, as opposed to moving in swarms as they used to do, which made it easier for aerial spraying. But now they are not moving in such swarms when it comes to the aerial spraying efforts. They are dispersing and hiding under some of these leaves, making it hard to spot them, which is said to have been a big blow when it comes to the effort to contain this locust. So more of that is there on the county news pull-out segment. Doreen.
Now, to that story that I was telling you earlier on about students in KCP, KCSE being cancelled. So this is what the professor had to say yesterday. Magoha dismisses call to postpone exams. Well, the Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha has dismissed calls for postponement of national exams over the COVID-19 pandemic, maintaining it is too early to make such decisions. So this is what he said, and I quote, "There is no reason why any parent should be worried, because when time comes, we'll tell them what to do, and we have several scenarios," he said. So it is not time for parents to panic. It is not time for schools to panic, wondering what will happen to KCP, KCSE students, and it is not time to call for postponement of exams. That is what he said, even in that, just by that I've just read there. And at the same time, the Education CS continued urging learners to continue learning using the online platforms that the government has established. Like I'd mentioned earlier, that is where students are going to using the online platforms to continue with their studies, because as of now, schools have been closed, both primary, secondary, as well as tertiary institutions. And for those that are not able to use the online platforms, TVs and radios have become a place where they can continue with their studies, even in this 1,000 harvesters lose jobs. Remember, people have been losing jobs. Some have been subjected to half salaries. Some do not know even what their fate as far as employment is concerned. So the COVID-19 pandemic effects have now spread to the construction sector, leaving hundreds of workers jobless. This is as construction sites close, and this is specifically in Maimahiu in Naivasha area, where over 3,000, you can imagine that number, 3,000 sand loaders and harvesters have been left jobless. And a good number of these people that are being left, so you can imagine how difficult it is for them to even just put basic needs such as food on their table, and this time even when they are losing their jobs. But some a couple of weeks ago, the health workers in Meru County wanted to go on strike because of unpaid dues. Well, that probably might be the case in Vihiga County. And so the Council of Governors steps in to stop planned nurses' strike in Vihiga County. So the COG has been forced to intervene to have Vihiga County health staff pay their salaries to help scuttle the planned strike. So they were planning to go on strike because of unpaid dues. And so this Vihiga County has not paid their health staff their last month's salary, something which poses a threat to smooth delivery of health services in that specific county. This is in Vihiga County. Let's hear what the county governor there said. And so this is what he said, I quote, "We are facing a problem in paying salaries of our health staff who are on the front line in the war against coronavirus because the National Treasury has failed to release money on time. And so we cannot operate without money." So he's saying that the National Treasury has failed to release money on time, which is becoming difficult for them to pay health workers. Remember, health workers are the ones on the front line. They still have families, they still have homes to go to. And so if they're working with unpaid dues, then it becomes so difficult for them to even continue working. To a bit of politics now. This was also a story that was mentioned in the Standard. This is about what is happening in the Jubilee Party. No longer at ease as ruling Jubilee factions pull out. But more of that story has been well detailed in the same paper. Still matters politics. Waiguru welcomes graft probe, says MCAs in ouster bid driven by political vendetta. This was when MCAs in this county, this is Kirinyaga County, were proposing a motion to impeach the Kirinyaga County governor. So this is what the Kirinyaga County governor is saying, that the governor has now welcomed planned investigations by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission over corruption allegations levied. The EACC or any other independent investigative organ was welcome to the county to probe existence of any malfeasance by the executive and the county assembly. So he is welcome the EACC or any independent body that wants to come probe the issue to come in for them to do their investigation. This is after MCAs in that specific county proposing a motion to impeach the county governor, that is Anne Waiguru. Let me look at one story now. This is in Matters Business. And Balala asks global organizations to form alliances to protect tourism. Remember, the tourism sector is one of the most hit sectors, especially during this coronavirus pandemic, because a good number of even hotels rely on tourists coming into the country. But of course, that has been banned because, like I had mentioned earlier, that flights in and out of the country have been banned. So the Tourism Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala has asked global organizations in the spirit of collaboration against the COVID-19 crisis, which has affected the industry. So he said this during an tourism industry summit dubbed Hospitality Tomorrow. So this is when he was saying yesterday, all hospitality industry heads. So this was saying that they should come together this industry. But that's on the in the headline segment. We of course continue with the day's discussion in Good Morning Kenya. Jane.
All right. And speaking of the day's discussions, we welcome you to be part of these conversations using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle is at KBC Channel 1. And do remember to tag us individually as well. My handle is the Jane Wamboy. My colleagues at Ramaguko, at Dorina Range, and at Fiona Shuru is how you can reach them individually. And if you so prefer to send us a message, 20154 is the number. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, today we continue with a series of discussions in regards to positive parenting that we started last week. And last week it was just helping you understand what positive parenting is all about amid this crisis that we are in, the COVID-19 pandemic. So today we pick up from where we left off last week, and today we look at a different aspect of parenting, and this is all about parenting styles. So many are wondering, okay, is there even a parenting style there that has been scientifically proven to be true? Yes, there are, and there are 5 of them that we're going to be looking at today. And to help us with this discussion this morning, we have with us in studio this morning the same lady that we had last week. She is Lillian Mutua, who is the County Health Promotion Coordinator here in Nairobi County. Karibu sana. Good to have you.
Thank you.
All right, and remember, you can always follow NACADA on social media. The handle is at NACADA.
Yeah,
yes,
NACADA.
At NACADA. Any questions, comments, or clarifications that you may be needing that you want to send directly to them, do send them through using their handle, that is NACADA. Now, let's just get straight into it. You know, when we talk about parenting styles, somebody is wondering, okay, what do you mean when you talk about parenting styles? And maybe we could start there. What does parenting style even entail? What does that whole word mean?
Thank you. Now, when we talk of parenting styles, is actually the manner in which you relate with your children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it has to do with the communication. And communication here is not just what your mouth is saying, it is also what your body language is saying.
Mm.
Yeah. And then the kind of support that you're going to give your children and even the people around you, including your spouse.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is what the parenting style is about.
Is all about.
Yes.
And one might be wondering, okay, parenting styles, why are they important? You know, is this something that I really need to be paying attention to? But what is the importance of, you know, these different parenting styles that are out there?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So it's really important that we know what kind of style we are using, because when you become aware of something, then it becomes necessary for you to, it becomes, you know, you begin to consciously think about it. For example, you find that you will have a mother and a father using 2 different styles, which can actually be conflicting. So you find that one probably is very strict, yeah, and the another one is very permissive.
Yes.
So you see, definitely you're going to have conflict in the way you are handling the same child.
Mm.
And the children actually get to know which parent is soft and which one is the strict one.
And
so,
they take advantage.
Yes, they will take advantage. So if they find that you as probably the father is the one that allows things, then if they want something, they come to you. If they know that the mother is strict because probably she keeps track of a lot of things in their lives, then they are likely to say, no. If it is in this case, don't go to mom. You will not succeed.
You will not.
So you see that having 2, and people more often than not do not have the same styles.
Yes.
So that means that being aware of it so that you do not conflict. Yeah. Because you can imagine if the 2 of you, you go to mom and mom says, that cannot happen. Last time I already gave you this amount of money. What did you do with it? Then you go to dad. Dad says, oh, how much do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, definitely, the child is also going to get confused and take advantage anyway, depending on what they want.
And they do that.
Yeah.
I have witnessed it with my 7-year-old. When they see they can't penya here, they go to the other parent.
Yeah.
Now let's just get straight into some of these parenting styles that are out there that, you know, most have been tested and proven. And let's start with the harshest of them all that has been noted out there. And this is the authoritarian way of parenting. Help us understand what this authoritarian way is all about.
I'm sure a good number of us went through that kind of authoritarian parenting, which means that obedience is something that is very key.
Yeah.
I have said that you wake up and go and take your breakfast. So you don't seek your opinion in terms of that. It's about what I have said. So it means that as a parent, you more or less give direction and you expect that they should be obedience from the point of the child.
There's no room for negotiation.
There is no room for negotiation.
What I say is cast on stone. It is, there's no, you don't have to get saying this. It is more of a one-way street.
Including as a parent, you can decide, oh, you know what? You are going to study medicine. And I'm sure you know a number of children who have gone through medical school and then they finish and say, okay, that was dad's.
Now let me do mine.
Yes, let me now go and do mine.
I think this authoritarian way of parenting should be named AKA the African style of raising children. Because for most of us, even for our parents, you know, that is the way things were. You know, what the parent says goes. But, you know, just looking at this way of parenting, it has both its, you know, advantages and disadvantages. But let's just start by understanding how it impacts the child. And we want to look at different aspects of how the child is brought up. Let's start with, you know, the esteem of the child. How is this type of parenting, what is the relationship that it has on this child's self-esteem?
You know, if you are never ever given a chance to speak up, there is a way in which you always feel small.
Yes.
So if you feel small, it means that even when you know something, you can actually not, even in class, you can't raise your hand so that you can say, you just give your opinion. You always have a feeling, you know, they will not accept what I'm saying. Oh, no, you know, nobody cares about what I say. So that means that such a child is likely to have a low esteem. So they never ever get to speak up. So essentially, particularly when they get into preteen and then teen, then you begin to see a lot of aggression.
Yes. Now, when it comes to how they view authority and, you know, especially when they're in places where they're independent, how does this sort of parenting impact how they view authority?
So then, you know, there are two ways. That is why some then become very aggressive because of, they find they would actually want to do something that is out of the ordinary. So more or less like rebelling. So on the one hand, they can rebel. On the other, then you find that they'll just do it the way it happens at home.
They'll be very timid.
Become very timid and just say, okay, it is easier to just do it than to raise your voice and say something.
All right. And also still looking at children who are brought up, you know, in this form of parenting style, mostly because, you know, you cannot just use one parenting style exclusively. For the children who have been brought up, you know, mostly under this authoritarian way of authoritarian parenting style, how are they, when it comes to their relationship to alcohol and drugs? How is that affected along the journey much later in life?
You know, as a parent, you probably have said, you cannot, you know, then it means there's a lot of don'ts.
No,
Let me not find you. Take alcohol. This is not allowed. But now when they get into teenage and then into young adulthood, then they're just likely to do what you told them not to do.
Because now they have the freedom to do so.
Just to test and see, okay, what else can you do? Because you see, when they were younger, you had a lot of authority. Probably you could even use the cane. You could punish them. But now when they are older, you know, you realize that they are taller than you, so they can look down upon you. They've developed some muscles. So it means that if you try to continue the same way, you know, they're likely to also stand up and show you that, yes, now I'm bigger.
So it could either lead them extremely towards wanting to, you know, try out alcohol and all other forms of drugs. So it's a predisposing factor.
Yes, it's actually a predisposing factor because remember that the person has not been able to express themselves. And you know, when you talk of things like alcohol and drugs, they are actually things that, you know, take out the best or the worst in you. Inafungua roho. So it means that it gives you an opportunity to actually say what you want.
What you really want to say. All right. Now let's quickly move on to another type of parenting style that is out there, and this is the authoritative. The first one is authoritarian, and then we have the authoritative. Tell us a bit about the authoritative way of parenting.
So the authoritative is actually warmer. So that means you are more or less saying, let's talk about it. So you see, as a parent, I still have the final say. But I'm giving you a chance to say something. So that then you say, Oh, so if it is, let's say, in careers, then you're like, okay, so what would you really want to study? Yeah. So probably they say, oh, I want to be a musician. The authoritarian one will say, what? That cannot happen in this house.
In my house.
In my house, that cannot happen.
Yeah.
But you see, as an authoritative parent, then you're likely to ask yourself, oh, so what do you want to do as a musician? Where do you study this? And then where would you study it? Okay? So once you finish, then what would you want to do? You're giving a child an opportunity to actually think deeply about what they are talking about.
Okay.
So whereas you do not agree with them, you're likely to say, no, it can't happen in my house. But let's talk about it. Gives you an opportunity to hear what they are saying. Then, you could even ask them questions and let them explore. And then they realize, no, I don't think that is a good one.
Now, when it comes to enforcing, the rules and laws that every house has, how is the authoritative parent when it comes to this, rules and the children in the house?
Yeah, like in the last week, we talked about the issue of, developing routine.
Yeah.
And this routine is developed with the children. So that as you come up with rules, you're also talking about the consequences
of breaking them.
Consequences. So that now, when it comes to a situation where they have violated what they agreed upon, you're going to ask them, okay, so what did you say happens if you don't finish your food? They give you the answer. Say, okay, so now what happens? Yeah, because you see, probably you had agreed that if you finish your food, and sometimes it takes hours to finish this food.
Yes.
If you finish your food, then you're going to have 30 minutes of video game. So I said, okay, so what did you say happens if you don't finish your food? Oh, you don't do the video game. All right. So that means that now you forgo your video game. Yeah. So that way, it helps the child as they grow up that they are usually the pros and cons of doing things.
They're part of the decisions that involve them.
Yes, yeah. And the fact that they are decisions, there is actually responsibility towards what you are doing.
Now, when it comes to how this type of parenting impacts their self-esteem, how does it resonate? How does their self-esteem get to show itself in places where they are not in the presence of the parent?
When you're given a chance to actually speak your mind, I give you an opportunity to speak your mind, even though in the end, I will say no. Yeah. You feel like, okay, I
had
tried.
The chance.
Yes, I had the chance, I tried. So it means that that child's self-esteem is much higher. They are able to speak up their minds. They are able to express themselves. If something is not right, they can actually stand up. Yeah, if they find that maybe somebody is being discriminated against, even if it's a classmate, they're likely to stand up and say, this is actually not right. So it means that the person has a chance to, even make decisions and also help others around them.
They feel
become
that
more
their
caring.
voice can be heard.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to how they look at authority and discipline, how are they compared, at least to the authoritarian category?
Yeah, in this case, when they look at discipline, then they begin to see the idea behind it. Yes, there is always the idea behind it. So that they know there are certain things that are a no-no. Even in this house, there are things that we don't discuss.
Yes.
Yeah, because that one is parental responsibility. But there are certain things that we can actually discuss. So it means that they get to know that, even in terms of discipline, there are certain things that you can do, and there are certain things that you can explain your way out, and so on. So it means that they're able to get that balance out of it.
They understand the why behind the authority, not just the figure per se.
And they're likely to ask you why. Yes, why should I do that? In the authoritarian, we were always told, I have said you must be here by 7 p.m. There's no room for why.
Because I said so.
Because I said so.
Yeah.
So there is no voice. But in authoritative, then, they could ask why, or you're going to even give explanations. For example, you see right now, people are supposed to stay home. Curfew begins at 7. Yeah. Should you be found outside, then these are the things that will happen.
Yeah.
If it is not curfew time, then what happens if you're out in the dark?
Okay.
Yeah. So would you then explain yourself? If you're running late, do you get to explain yourself and so on? So then they understand the why behind everything.
What is being put in place.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to their attitude towards alcohol and drug use, how are they compared to, the children who are under the authoritarian, who you find they're pretty, pushed to the edge and they might be inclined to try, alcohol and drugs? What about this category?
Because there's already warmth. There's already a warmth and care between the parent and the child. So it means that even as a parent, you must have also talked about, we don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Alcohol is not allowed. It is not good for it's not good for your brain because your brain is still developing. Remember, you have already given reasons. You're not just saying how alcohol is not allowed. You are telling them what is it that happens when you take alcohol. These are the things that it will happen. Your age does not allow this. It's going to affect your brain because your brain is still growing and so on. So you see, you've already given a reason. Now, when it comes to drug use, you see, they're likely to remember this. Yeah, they're likely to remember this, that my parents don't approve of this. I would not want to disappoint my mother or my father. So it means that they are likely to be much more aware of the fact that this is not right. Yeah. And they think about what will the other person think about, compared to the other one who say, let's see what they will do.
Fire.
Yeah.
Tufanye sahi kesi baadaye.
Yeah.
All right. So they're better positioned when it comes to making decisions about themselves involving alcohol and other drugs.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to the next category, which is called the permissive style of parenting. Permissive, starting from the word, tell us a bit about it.
Permissive just means that everything goes.
Anything goes.
Anything goes. Yeah. Anything goes. And so when it comes to permissive parenting, this is likely to happen more. You know that we also have in our cultures.
Yes.
Sometimes we have children that are named after, this child is named after my father or is named after my mother.
Mama na baba.
Yes. So you also have these pet names of daddy, mommy, and so on.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a child that you're already thinking in terms of your mother or your father, it means that you're likely to allow a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're likely to allow a lot of things, and therefore you always want to, kind of like shield them, shield them from all this. So a lot of things go because of that kind of thing.
So when it comes to rules and enforcing some of these limits, how is that observed?
You're already permissive.
You
have already given so much room that there are no boundaries.
And even if you set these rules, they're not being observed?
Yeah, they would not be observed because you see, and again, more or less, it's going to happen with the parent who, it has, let's say my son has been named after my father. It means that I'm likely to always see, so if my husband is now probably being firm with my son, then I say, it looks like you are punishing my father.
Or are you being unfair?
Yes, you're being unfair. So you see, that is actually likely to bring a lot of conflict.
Yes.
Because already it means that you cannot even agree on a lot of things.
You compromise on so much.
And the child gets to learn that they can always get away with that.
Now, how does this relate to their self-esteem much later in life? The children
who
have been brought up in such a setup.
First of all, they have very little control, and even in terms of emotional regulation, so it means that their self-esteem, especially where they are with others who will not entertain those kind of things, they're likely to feel low, and therefore they're likely to lash out at others or run back to the parent and report how, they are doing this to me.
Yeah.
Yes, and sometimes you find such kind of parents can actually come out and say, oh, so what are you doing? What is your son doing to my son? Yes. So you see, with that kind of thing, you are already making the child feel like you will always cover for them. You'll always cover for them, and therefore that brings a lot of conflict.
And when it comes to their ability to make decisions, how are they, children who are brought up under this style of parenting, decision-making skills, how are they impacted?
The decision-making skills will be poor. Because you see, they are never given an opportunity to think about, for you to make decisions, you need to weigh the options. You need to make a choice.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to think about, okay, so this is the issue. How do I address the issue? What are the options that I can have in this particular issue? And then you choose from there.
Yeah.
But you see, this one has never had an opportunity to do that. So it means they have no decision-making skills.
What of their attitude when it comes to now alcohol and drug use, especially much later in life?
Oh no, that then it's you know those controls. Children learn about social and even emotional regulation when they are young.
Okay.
So as they continue to grow, then they begin to know about limits. They begin to know about what is right and what is wrong. But if they are able to get away with it, they are actually not even able to conceptualize that alcohol or drugs will even affect them. Because so that means that they have a very high chance of getting into drug use. Yeah, because they are not able to make decisions.
So they're
easily
indulged without any limits put in place.
Oh yeah.
All right. That's a pretty harmful way of living.
Yeah.
But now let's quickly move on to the next category of parenting, and this is now the uninvolved. Wow. The fact that this actually exists, how is this a problem even when it comes to parenting? Those who are uninvolved.
This is where actually children take care of themselves.
And yet the parents are there.
The parents are there. So it means that they are very neglectful. If they have, and you see for children, it's not about the material things. Material things are so easy to get. Yeah, it's the easiest part in terms of raising children. It's the easiest part. Even though right now there are many people who are struggling with putting food on the table, but you find that putting food on the table when it comes to raising children is the easy part. Now, the part that they require is where you actually talk to them one-on-one. So you can imagine this kind of parenting that is neglectful or uninvolved. It means that they actually don't quite care in terms of the emotions. So once they have provided the food, it is there, you can figure out yourself. Even if it is school, we actually have parents who never go for parents' meetings.
Yeah.
And their children know. I say, oh, people are supposed to come for, don't worry, my parents won't come.
But
I
also,
know them.
we also have, at least for some of us, growing up, you get to a certain age where parents say, oh, anaweza jichunga, si anajua kupika, anajua kufunga mlango, anaweza jipeleka shule. Does this also sort of contribute to this sort of parenting, the uninvolved way, where you get to a certain age and your parents now let you go and you just take care of yourself?
There is when we talk about uninvolved, it means that they really do not quite care what happens in your life. But you know that children must also be given an opportunity at some point to be able to get out of the nest, to be able to take care of themselves. So those skills they must have had long before.
Okay.
Yeah. But now, if they get into a certain age where they can take care of other children, and we did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. If you had siblings behind you, you raised them one way or the other because your mother probably would be away, especially in the rural. Urban areas is a little bit different, but in the rural area, you're told, oh, you know what, there is mboga in the shamba. Yes, you can go and get mboga from the shamba. The water you can get from the river, and the firewood you can get from the forest. Yeah, it is there. And please make sure that the children have taken a bath.
Firstborns,
Yes,
deputy parents.
firstborns, yeah. So you see then, you realize that yes, you may have been overburdened, given your age and so on. But then you realize that what you learned in that particular kind of style is that taking responsibility. So you find that you become a much better decision maker. Yeah? It's only that now when you find others who were raised in those other styles, you're going to conflict.
Yeah, it becomes a very big problem.
Even
how
at the
you
place
relate.
of work, you're likely to conflict because you say, how is it possible that you're not able to think about that? That you you can't do these things. How?
How?
Yeah, because now it means that however you were raised, then also comes to that place of work.
Yeah. So for this category, the uninvolved parents, for it to qualify to be the uninvolved, the parents need to be completely, absent in terms of providing emotional, psychological, and all that.
Yeah.
And not this way of sort of, making you responsible that we are used to.
Yeah. So the child basically, it means that they are taking care of themselves. It's
all right.
Really
not that the parent
nothing.
is busy elsewhere.
And they may even be in that house.
Okay.
They live in the same house. It's just that you don't bother as a parent to find out also, did you even eat? First of all, you are a child. So probably it should have been, somebody should have made the food.
Yes.
The food there.
And provided.
You see, they don't even bother. Oh, I hope you have eaten. Yeah. So it's, and that is your mother who is asking, I hope you have eaten. So it means that they do not have much connection
with you as a child, and
Yeah.
Okay.
So it means that they actually the child is not able to express themselves in terms of the challenges that they are facing.
All right.
Yeah.
Now that is the uninvolved way of parenting. Still looking at how, the different styles of parenting that are out there and which one you should start employing if you are not. But we will be getting to that in not too long. But for now, we want to take a very quick breather. Do stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.
What has been your greatest challenge as a parent during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic situation? As we wait for the pandemic to be over at home, COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to reconnect with our children. Join Nakada during Good Morning Kenya Breakfast Show as we discuss positive parenting. Remember, parenting is all about you. Nakada, for a nation free from alcohol and drug abuse.
Tonight on Corner.
Jana wote utaka kujifeel special.
Lakini kabla uendelee niko ndaka ujue sina pesa mingi.
Nani ameongea kuhusu pesa?
Onjada, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. And once they start selling, you'll never look back.
You and I need a serious talk.
Sure. Is there a problem?
I wish to get some information.
Yo, remember, ukitaka kustay safe from coronavirus, lazima ufuate hizi steps. 1. Osha mikono kila time for 20 seconds, hata unaweza imba happy birthday mara 2. 2. Usishike uso, macho na mapua yako especially kama hujaosha mikono. 3. Ukitaka kucough, utumie tissue alafu utupe kwa dustbin ama ucough kwa elbow. 4. Avoid kuenda mahali kuna watu wengi ama kusalimia mtu na kuhug mtu. In case usikie uko mgonjwa, please ambia parents wako ama guardians wako. Let's all stay safe.
Welcome back. Thank you for keeping it. Good morning, Kenya. Just pick it up from where we left. Remember, you're talking about parenting styles. Amid this crisis that we are in, you get to discover what sort of parenting you employ. And we've touched on 4 so far. We have touched on the authoritarian, the authoritative, the permissive, and the uninvolved. And I want us to move on to the final category before we get to another sub-final. And now this is the overprotective kind of parenting. Now, for some would think, as a parent, you're supposed to protect your child. And, especially when they're much younger, we tend to be very overprotective. Before you let them go to their shop by themselves, they will go when they're 12. Tell us a bit about this overprotective way of parenting.
Now, in the overprotective, as a parent, you tend to view the world as a very dangerous place.
And rightfully so it is.
It is dangerous. But again, the child also needs to experience some of these dangers. Because if you don't experience the dangers, then you will never get to know. Yeah. So take, for example, a small child who is maybe a toddler.
Yes.
And there is a lamp there or something that is hot. It could even be a kettle or something that is hot. And you keep telling them, oh, don't touch the iron box, it will burn you. Oh, don't touch the kettle, don't touch this. They are not able to relate with the why. Because you are also not telling them, you're just telling them that don't do this, don't do that. Yes, yeah. But the day they touch, and it actually burns, even if you put it there, they will not take. So they say, they will be moving so far away because they have learned from experience that iron box can burn you, or that kettle, when it is on the table, is actually hot and can burn you.
But as a parent, it's so hard for you to allow it to happen when you can stop it. How then do you just draw that balance between allowing them to actually experience some of these dangers of life and still protect them at the same time?
Yeah, like we mentioned, the issue of explaining things.
Yeah.
So that they get to understand. Yeah, depending on the age, they get to understand. If it is a preteen, a teenager, you're telling them about the dangers of drugs, for example.
Yeah.
You're telling them about other risky behaviors. And we have other risky behaviors like even gaming, pornography, all those are addictive behaviors that will fall in the same category as alcohol and drug use.
Yes.
Yeah. So, get to give that parental control. But again, yes, it is your role to protect them, but you can't view the place as so dangerous until you fail to thrive. Because that is what happens if you do not allow room to thrive. Like if a child is learning to walk and you never want to let them to fall, and yet you've got to fall to be able to be able to get back up. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to how they relate to, things like alcohol and drug use much later in life, these children who have been brought up under this style of parenting, how are they?
If you already, I don't get to experience the other side of things. And that doesn't mean that they need to experience alcohol to be able to know that it is bad. This is the kind of parent who, for example, will say, oh no, the schools give so much homework. Oh, my child, you are suffering. And they can even sit down and help the child to do the work.
Give them all the answers.
Yes, give them all the answers so that we can finish this job quickly. And probably even complain about teachers and what they are doing and so on. Yeah. So it means that then the child feels that it is the other people that are bad, and therefore they do not have an opportunity. Now, when it comes to drug use, remember, they haven't developed the skills. Because when we talk of prevention, it's about the skills. Decision making, balances between right and wrong, and the consequences of a behavior. They need to be assertive so that if somebody is offering me this, then I'm able to say no. How do I say no? It means that you must be having a plan. So if you are already protecting them, it means you're not giving them an opportunity. You're not giving them an opportunity to experience all
You've already hampered a life skill.
Yes. You actually don't give them the skills that they need to live in the dangerous world.
I think that's a struggle that so many, especially first-time parents, struggle with because, mama ameanguka, staki baba afanye hii, this and this and this and that. So overprotective. And, as a parent, it comes naturally, but you also need to have a limit to enable your child to develop some of these life skills.
Yeah.
Now, as we bring the conversation to a close, now this is not one that has been tested and proven, but we have seen it, we see it every day, and as a parent, you have exercised it at one point or the other. Teleparenting over the phone. You are laughing at that.
Yes. And this is very common with mothers.
Yes.
Mothers are the ones who are more often using this telephone parenting. Because if you actually have a clear plan, it means that before you leave your house, you should have made everything, arranged everything so that then even the nanny or whoever else is available in the house can actually continue with whatever. Whatever, let them live their lives, for once. Like even now, during this time when we are home, let them cook, yeah? Let them make raw ugali. Let them eat the raw ugali. Let them, learn that this is how raw ugali feels like, and that is how they are going to learn.
Yes.
But now when it comes to telephone parenting, oh, fulani ameamka. So umemwosha. So you want to ask about everything. It is lunchtime, you want to ask about, what have they eaten? Oh, mumepika nini, and so on. Oh, I had left some money in this place. Why don't you use? So, you cause a lot of confusion.
Yes.
And remember we said that even your home requires routine.
Yes.
So that, there is order and children work better with order.
Yeah.
But if you are always giving instructions and counter instructions, wait until you are away. Yes, out in another city and so on. You want to do homework over the phone, you want to confirm this, you want to confirm that.
It becomes too much.
And the children say, mom is calling again. Yeah, so they just bear you through. But you see, they'll just go ahead and do what I said. Oh, okay. So, you will even be asking, is so-and-so in the house? Can I speak to them? Yes, yeah. So what you are actually taking away from the children are the skills that they require. It requires skills to do their chores. They require skills to make decisions. If they want to eat junk on that day, let them eat junk. You will deal with the real foods when you come back.
Yeah.
The real foods when you come back. But when you are away, let them have the decision-making authority so that they can decide what they want to cook, when they want to cook, and so on.
Not calling every time.
Yes.
Tunapika nini leo?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think as mothers, we have all gone through that, as I hide my face. And it's something that, you always want to ensure that things are in order. But not looking at all these parenting styles, trying to find a balance and employing different types of parenting styles at different points in time. How would you advise parents to go about that?
First of all, you need to ask yourself what kind of style, based on what we have discussed, what kind of style.
Study yourself first.
Yeah, study yourself first.
Okay.
And then also look at your spouse, if you have one. Because more often than not, you find that people sometimes are on opposite ends. Can you discuss even as a family to agree, this is how we are going to handle discipline issues? Yeah.
Yes, joint union.
So if I'm the one speaking, then you just shut up and don't say anything. We shall sort this one out in our room, away from the children. Yeah, so that you have one front when it comes to dealing with discipline issues.
Okay.
Because if you don't do this when they're younger, as they grow into teenage, that is why people also dread the teenage. As they grow into teenage, then it becomes even more difficult.
A very big problem.
Yeah. So you need to know what is your style and what should you do so that you have a balance. You know very well that, as you discuss this, if you are a student, you know the role of a student.
Yes.
And if you're a parent, you know the role of a parent.
Absolutely.
So if my job is to get the fees paid, what is your job as a student? So I would, to study. So then we shouldn't be having a lot of back and forth over studying because remember, it is your role. And alongside, what is it that you have decided as a person that you want to do in future? That's another thing that we don't do with our children.
Yes.
Just ask like, what do you want to do in future? And it changes from the time they are toddlers to the time they start going to school, to the time they get to class 8, to the time they get to Form 4. It's very different.
All right.
Because from our studies, we actually noted as NACADA, the reason why we are doing all this, I know somebody listening to us would be wondering, why is NACADA talking about parenting and so on?
Yes.
It's coming from our own studies. And we know that parents have been absent in the lives of the children. The kind of styles you use is putting children at risk for alcohol and drug use, so that by the time they begin to use drugs, first of all, you'll be the last one to know, and then the way you're going to be handling it is even going to make the situation worse.
Counterproductive.
Yeah,
Right.
and that is why you see that even, and not just alcohol and even other mental health issues. You know, the depression that will come in because this child is not able to talk. The next time you'll hear maybe another one has committed suicide. When you look at the note, the suicide note, it looks such a small thing, and then it's because you were never talking to the child, so you are not able to pick up
some of these problems
Yeah.
early. All right. Now, so as parents, during this time that we are at home with our children, take this time to learn yourself as a parent. Understand which sort of a parenting style you employ with your child, because there is that one that is predominant among these 5 that we've talked about. Understand how it is impacting your child, how the pros and cons of how you're parenting your child, and see what other styles of parenting you can employ. You don't have to be rigid and stick to one way of raising your child. No. Cut across the board, know when this is age appropriate, they need this now, they need that the other time, or the other partner needs to, you know, be this sort of parent for the benefit of the child. So understand yourself, have this conversation with your partner, and ultimately all this is for the good of the child, and not just now, but also later in life. Well, this has been part 2 of this positive parenting series of conversations that we have been having in partnership with NACADA. And of course, with us in studio this morning, we have Susan Maua.
Just to finish?
Yes, before you finish, she is the acting manager in charge of public education and advocacy at NACADA. And maybe you could give us now your parting word.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So I know there are some people, some parents who probably are already having children who have started using drugs.
Yes.
Or probably you have many more questions that you would want to ask. We have a helpline, 1192, that somebody can call so that you speak to a counselor. Those are addiction counselors, and they would be able to help.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with something, call that number, drugs or alcohol. And even as a parent, if you're looking for advice when it comes to positive parenting.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's the place to go.
All right. Thank you so much for making time. We absolutely appreciate you for being with us this morning. And we will be continuing with this series of discussion next week on Monday. So keep it here to catch up with the next topic, all about positive parenting. Doreen.
So we are live on Facebook, on YouTube. It is KBC Channel 1 TV Live. So if you're going to your workstation, going to your business, somewhere just moving around the city, you do not have access to your TV, you can stream in live and watch the discussions even as they continue. Really nice discussions happening here on Good Morning Kenya. Also on Twitter at KBC Channel 1 TV, our individual handles at Jane Wamboe, at Ram Aguko, at Fiona Shuru, and mine at Doreen Arangi. And of course, I'll be looking at your Twitter comments a bit later, but let's begin with Facebook. This is Brandon saying that morning, freshly tuning in from Kisii County. Paul Omondi saying that good morning, also tuning in from Siaya County. I also saw there's also one who's tuning in from Middle East. Again, Majaliwa saying good morning, tuning in from Kwale. Catherine tuning in from Narumoru, Nyeri County. So of course, you appreciate your feedback even as you're tuning in from different counties. Of course, you can continue sending in your questions, whether it is via Facebook or Twitter, even as you continue with the other discussions of the day. There's also Joshua who's tuning in from Dandora. Of course, these are just most of your comments showing that you're tuning in from different parts of the country. There's also this, let me just read this one last one, which is Peter Nyabongonye, who's saying that he is tuning in from Middle East. So of course, that means that it's not just here in Kenya or in Nairobi specifically, but different counties as well as beyond the country, which is a nice thing. So that's that on Facebook. On Twitter, this is now in regards to the discussion that Jane was having. This is about positive parenting, and at Esther saying that for mothers, parenting is automatic. For fathers, it's a choice. Just before I continue sampling the other comments here on Twitter, I'd love our guests to probably answer this. Is this really true, which is being said by Esther, that for mothers, parenting is automatic, and for fathers, it's a choice that they have to choose to be good parents?
Oh, thank you. So that's very interesting. I don't know how parenting becomes automatic, because even as, you know, the fact that you have given birth to a child then probably you think it is automatic because you can breastfeed them and so on. But we are talking of the nurturing. We have seen quite a number of mothers who also lack the nurturing skills. And when it comes to fathers, we also have quite a good number of fathers who are paying attention to their children. And probably when you talk about fathers being a choice, you know, in the traditional context, we also had a situation where fathers were supposed to be providing the economic bit, and then mothers will do the nurturing. But you see now, we are in a world where you cannot leave it to one person.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. So if you are doing one and not the other, then it becomes a problem. Actually, you lose out as a father.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe from the traditional context, that is why probably you think, oh, it is a choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so remember the hashtag on Twitter is hashtag Good Morning Kenya, and also there's another one here from @Alex saying that it is in these times when you at least need to discipline your children and teach them respect. I mean, again, from our guests, yes, it is a time where we are battling coronavirus pandemic, and some are saying that yes, in as much as children are at home right now because schools have been closed, whether it's primary, high school, or even tertiary institution, that this is the time when, especially children from primary schools, need to be taught discipline, self-respect. Is this just that specific time where they need to be taught discipline and self-respect just because they are at home with their parents?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a time when parents are readily available, but it's not the only time. Mm-hmm. It's not the only time that they need to do this because, and again, when you talk about teaching discipline, it's more of demonstrating that discipline and also respect, because as a parent, you remember, it's not what you say. It is actually your own actions. So if you don't respect others, don't expect the children to do the respect. And that's why you have seen this happen a lot with particularly mothers. They teach children that when somebody gives you something, then you say thank you. But as a parent, they've never heard you say thank you. Mm-hmm. So that is why anytime you're given something, including when you say, oh, can I get a glass of water? And they give you, never say thank you. So then the child does not know how to use this. That is why anytime somebody gives them something, then you remind them, oh, what do you do when somebody gives you this? Oh, thank you. How about saying thank you, practicing it, and then the child will do. So it is a good opportunity to do that, but that's why we are coming in now, that do this and thereafter, even post this particular season, you shall have already developed a system that all of you can flow into.
All right, so don't be an impromptu parent and say, sasa venye watoto wako nyumbani ndio nita make sure they are disciplined, they're respectful. It needs to be something you practice over time, not just overnight and expect your children to do.
Oh, yeah.
Don't ask of them things that you don't show them. It will be impossible and you'll frustrate yourself as a parent. Yeah. All right, Doreen.
Just allow me to read one last one, and this is also in form of a question. At Erastus Kimonge says, as a parent, sometimes you need to know what your son or daughter is doing inside his or her room. And when you know the truth, don't panic, but handle the situation with care. Of course, I want to believe that this probably he meant that even as a parent, well, you're probably looking out at what your son or daughter is doing inside the rooms. This could probably be you might find out something bad or negative. But he says that you need to handle the situation with care and do not panic. I mean, how practical is this, especially when you find your child just doing some funny things in their room, probably online or thereabout?
Yeah. Now, when we talk about monitoring, you know, there is monitoring and there is policing. So what are you trying to do? Yeah, what are you trying to do? Are you doing policing or you're doing monitoring? And at what point do you begin? Remember, we said these are things that start early in life. So you need to be doing this, even as they start going to school. When you tell them about taking other people's things without permission is stealing. Do you ever randomly, you know, like check their bags and see, okay, so this pencil doesn't belong to you. Whose is it? Now, when you have it now, what is the owner doing? Yeah. So what did we say about taking things without permission? Then the child gets to know. But you cannot wait until they get into teenage, because now your mind begins to think, I think they're doing things which are contrary. Yeah. And then you start doing inspection. Now you are a policeman and you're not monitoring. And in one of the sessions, we are actually going to talk about how do you hold these conversations, and then how do you get even to the point of talking about hard stuff like alcohol and drug use and sexuality and so on.
With your children?
Yeah.
Ooh, most parents would dread that phase. Doreen?
So we are done with the comments. That, of course, was on Facebook and Twitter. But remember to keep talking to us via our social media platforms. If it's Facebook, if it's Twitter, on Facebook, it is KBC Channel 1 TV live. So you can stream us live either on Facebook or on YouTube. On Twitter, it is at Jane Wamboy, at Ram Abuko, at Fiona Shuru, and mine at Doreen Arange. But before I move to something else, Jane,
yes,
as you wrap it up. All right. So let's now move to something else. Now, this is in regards to the discussion that, again, Jane will be having a bit later on the show, and this is in respect of the gender-based violence. In as much as number of countries are now on lockdown, about 90 countries across the globe are on lockdown. A number of countries have also introduced restriction of movement, and among them it is Nigeria, which at least 2 of their major cities are on lockdown. That is Lagos and Abuja. Here in Kenya, at least 4 counties, movement in and out of these 4 counties were restricted because they were regarded as the hotspots of this coronavirus. This is, of course, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi. As of now, we stand at 208 cases in the country, 40 recoveries, 9 deaths. But even at that, it is still continuing to build up. And it's very interesting how gender-based violence in this time is also increasing in a time where, like I mentioned, some countries are on lockdown, some countries are on restricted movement. So what that means is that a significant number of people are at home. And home is supposed to be a safe place, because whether you're at home because of one reason or the other, home is supposed to be a safe place. But what just leads to this increasing number of this gender-based violence in a place where it is supposed to be safe? Let's look at the figures. Now, more men than women are dying of COVID-19. Of course, that is something that we've already established as of now, and a number of scientists were trying to say that it's because men's immunity are a bit, they do not have their immunity is not as, if I may say, strong than that of women. That is why a significant number of men are dying of this COVID-19 as opposed to their female counterparts. Also to note that 75% of healthcare workforce are bound to be on the front line against this disease. Remember that when we talk about women, these women make up 75% of healthcare workforces. Remember that as of now, healthcare workers are the one, of course, on the front line, and women, because they make up the 75% of this. Because women make up the 75% of this. They make up 75% of this workforce. Then, being on the front line of dealing with this disease, then a good number of them, that means that they are not at. So what now leads to them being having to suffer a lot of gender-based violence in this time? Let me just give you what the UN Secretary General, this is General Antonio Guterres, he says that more women and girls under COVID-19 lockdown now suffer violence at home, where they should be safe. Just like I was telling you, here in Kenya, the National Helpline has registered an increase in gender-based violence cases in March. Remember, I mean, right now it is, today is 14th April, which of course marks a month, at least a month, since the first case was recorded here in the country, because the first case was recorded on 13th March. And since when the dusk to dawn curfew also commenced, this number has continued to go up. In March alone, were reported. This went up from 86 in February. Of course, this is an increase of 33.72% in just 3 weeks. So in March alone, it was 115 cases, which of course was more than what was recorded in February, which is of course more of what was recorded in February. But let me just give you also one, the leading forms of this violence, in as much as the numbers went up. So the leading forms of this violence include physical assault, psychological torture, and defilement. And of course, this curfew has increased this even the more, as a significant number of women are now staying at home. A significant number of children are also staying at home because schools have been closed. So that means children from both primary, secondary, and also tertiary institutions are at home. Remember that people have also been losing their jobs, and among them, of course, it is also women, so they are also at home. Jane.
Yes.
So 75% of healthcare workers, these are women, but looking at the leading forms of this violence, which are physical assault, psychological torture, and defilement, and also looking at the fact that the numbers are rising, one would want to imagine that, yes, people are at home. Home is supposed to be a safe place. Why would we be recording such high cases in this time when all we need to do is show love and care for each other as a family? Because also what was trying to achieve with people also staying at home, it is time for people to bond, time for people to know each other better. But on the flip side, we are recording more GBV cases than it was before.
So some of the questions that we're going to be looking to just try and answer, and we're going to be having two guests, one from Plan International and the other from the Henderson Violence and Recovery Center. And you know, the saddest thing about this, at least here in Kenya, when we were getting the status update on the judiciary, that was from the CJ about two weeks ago, he actually did mention that most of the cases that are coming up are cases of defilement. And as you have rightfully mentioned, you know, the home is supposed to be where as a child, you know, they are safe. But now in this case, so many of these cases that are being reported that are revolving around sexual violence are to do with perpetrators who are in the house, who are defiling our young girls and boys for that matter, are sexually defiling them and taking advantage of them. And that this has gone up by 35% in Nairobi County alone since our children closed school. And still looking at the global numbers, it is said that a third of all women, a third of the entire global population of women have experienced one form of violence or the other in their lifestyle. And at this time, when you're fighting COVID-19, Kosovo is said to be having it worst when it comes to some of these sexual offenses that are being reported. And of course, here in Kenya, we have the Ministry of Health that has issued, and they're of course in partnership with the government, that have issued measures that are supposed to protect us during this time that we are fighting COVID-19. But at the same time, when all these measures are being put in place, some are taking advantage of the situation and making the most in negative light when it comes to our young girls and boys and women. Before, it has been said that when we're having pandemics, you know, it is women who get to have it hard because of the unbalanced forms of resources that are out there, and of course the challenge of safety and security. This is a conversation that we're going to be having after this interview that we are about to have right now. So any questions, comments, or you know, anything that you may be needing in relation to sexual and gender-based violence offenses during this crisis, do feel free to send them through via our communication platforms. Ram.
Speaking of COVID-19, currently Kenya, in terms of the numbers, 208 confirmed cases, 40 recovered cases, 9 deaths. What next? Well, this morning we'll be joined, I'm joined live by Professor Matilu Mwau, the Deputy Director for the Kenya Medical Research Institute. Prof, thank you very much for finding time to join me this morning. And in regards to that, the COVID-19, there was a call by the World Health Organization, WHO, to all countries to, and I quote, test, test, and test, as part of this strategy to contain this coronavirus. Now, what is the Kenya Medical Research Institute doing in regards to this call?
Thank you. First of all, when we had that call from the WHO, we thought they were addressing the Kenya Medical Research Institute.
Oh.
Because we are the one public institution that has got the capacity to test thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and the human resources that we have, and also the technical skills. So our position is that at this moment we are well placed so that if the call for testing of more people than will be right now we are going to deliver on but we're not the only institution that has resources. Remember that the government investment molecular testing control of 10 labs that have the capability deliver numbers of, and some other almost 200 labs in the counties that have been testing for tuberculosis and HIV and are well placed. So in other words, all over the country for coronavirus testing at the moment.
All right, and in regards to that, how far away? You've said you have the facilities, you have the machines. How far away when it comes to getting the possible solutions?
Thank you. You recall at the very beginning,
yes,
around March to just recently.
All right, we have lost the prof there. That is Professor Matilu Mwau, the Deputy Director for the Kenya Medical Research Institute. We'll be linking up with him in a bit.
Provided with samples, they were receiving fewer samples than they were capable of testing. And the major problem was just the reagents, the test reagents that were difficult to obtain because the rest of the world had ring-fenced these reagents for themselves. But about 3 days ago, large testing labs, those that have automated testing infrastructure into play, and even as we speak, most of the samples that are being collected right now are being tested by the automated laboratories. The automation helps with regards to protecting the health worker from getting infected because when you have automated, you manipulate the sample very little. Whereas when you are doing manual testing, you manipulate the sample a lot, and that manipulation or handling with your hands is what makes you put you at risk of infection.
And even as you talk about manipulation, because it can, put you at risk of getting an infection. How are you protecting yourselves, because you're the ones who are, handling all these things, all these samples? How do you protect yourselves?
First of all, in fact, I quite often encourage people to come to our laboratories and see that we look like how the men who went to the moon looked like those days in 1969. It's very difficult for anything to touch my skin because whereas the people out there are at some risk of getting infected, the people in the lab are at a much higher risk because they are handling the real live viruses. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they must dress up in what we call PPE, and they must keep the surfaces, every surface, very, very clean, decontaminated every day, several times. So if you come to our labs, you'll find that we have the reagents decontaminating the surfaces. Some of the reagents you are familiar with, like GIC and ethanol. Some of them you're not familiar with, like some other things called RNase array and so on. Those ones you may not know. Mm-hmm. But we keep our labs spotlessly clean and decontaminated.
Is it true that the virus has mutated, the coronavirus, that it has mutated? It's not how it was before, in this initial state?
Yeah, but not in the sense that you think. When you think of mutation, you normally think of, now the virus drugs will not work against it, or it will become much more aggressive and so on. But in science, mutation is just a little bit of changes here and there. The changes are helpful to the virus, and some of them are even harmful to the virus itself. So there are a few changes here and there the virus goes through, because remember that you are passaging the virus from one person, you passage it through one person, then you passage it to the next person, and the body of a person puts the virus under selective pressure. The immunity puts the virus under selective pressure. So it's the virus's job. It is job to try to escape from that pressure, so that it doesn't get killed or destroyed. And in that sense, it changes a little bit. But so far, I've not seen mutations that would make me panic or worry too much. The way you see in HIV. In HIV, when there are mutations, some of them make you worry because maybe the drugs won't work. So that's not what we are looking at here.
So it is possible that the mutation can also work for good, especially as researchers.
Yes, sometimes mutations make the virus not fit to survive, okay? So, and then now it is easier for it to just go away or get overcome by the immune system. But some mutations make the virus fitter, right? Because remember, mutations are random things, all right? But for coronavirus, what we are worried about right now is not so much the mutations. This is early days. You've had it for how many days? Maybe 120 days or something. So What we are worried about is its infectious nature. It's a very infectious virus. And this is why you are told, stay at home, wear a mask, wash your hands, don't touch people and don't even greet people, because we know how infectious it is. Don't spit around randomly, don't sneeze randomly, you see, because we know how infectious it is.
But initially, Kenya had no capacity to test any suspected case of COVID-19 in the initial stages, and we had to, all samples had to be flown to South Africa, which at some point was inconveniencing at one level or the other. But now, KEMRI was recognized by WHO. You came up with test kits. But now, let's talk about sampling, because that is where it all begins. KEMRI is leading in sampling COVID-19 cases. Speaking of sampling, how do you come up with all these samples and isolate them in the laboratory? What is the process?
All right. First of all, let me make a correction.
Yes.
The statement that all samples are sent to South Africa is false. There's no such thing. That statement is false.
There were no samples taken to South Africa?
There was, if I remember correctly, there was only one sample that was taken to South Africa.
Only one sample?
And even that one was not tested there. We ended up testing it, okay? So that statement needs to be corrected so that Kenyans can understand just what they are capable of.
That's what's going on around, in even our media outlets.
Yeah, but because I am now testing fraternity, I can tell you that Kenyans need to be aware of how much they have invested in this kind of infrastructure. So it would be a disappointment if they knew that they have invested billions of shillings and then they couldn't do a simple test like this one. The truth of the matter is that Kenyans invested in the right thing. And that's why we are able to test. This is their property. Now, coming back to sampling, let me tell you what happens. So there is a person who is in quarantine or is in isolation or is admitted in hospital. Okay? This person is suspected to have coronavirus. And a medical worker comes to that person. The medical worker is dressed up in a protective gear, all right? And he's carrying, the medical worker, he or she, is carrying something that looks like a cotton bud, the one that you put, although you're not supposed to put it in there. A cotton bud. Two of them that look like cotton buds. They are called swabs, okay? Now, the medical worker also has a small tube that has a liquid inside. The liquid is it just goes up to just be halfway in the tube, and that liquid is called a virus transport medium. Sometimes that liquid is called a universal transport medium, UTM or VTM. So the health worker puts that swab that looks like a cotton bud in the nose of the patient and pushes it all the way to the back of the nose where there's some resistance, it can't go further, and then rotates it a little bit and pulls it out and breaks the tip off and puts in the tube. Then they put the second swab inside the throat up to the back of the throat, the pharynx, and then they take it out, and then they ensure it's not contaminated with saliva, take it out, and then they put it in the tube, and they close the tube. Then they put the tube in a box that has ice, okay, an ice box, a cooler box, and then they quickly bring to the lab. And if the lab is far away, they take a vehicle, but if it's near like Mbagathi, they might just walk across and bring the tubes, okay? Then, when the tubes come to us, what do? We look at the tube. If we are doing manual testing, we add some buffer inside, some liquid inside first, okay? I'll explain to you why we do that. If we are doing automated testing, we still add some buffer inside, okay? Some liquid, all right? But in both cases, we work a biosafety cabinet. In other words, our hands are inside something that looks like a box, and the air inside that box does not come into contact with us. It is sucked up by some suction system, so we don't get infected, all right? So, liquid that we add inside that tube, what does it do? So the first liquid is called a virus transport medium. That one is to keep the virus viable until it gets to the lab so that we are able to find it if it's there. The second liquid is to help us extract the genetic material from the virus. Now, imagine if the virus was like an egg. So inside the egg, in the middle of the egg is what we call, I think, the egg yolk. The middle is called the yolk.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So the liquid we are putting in is to break the shell and to digest the other proteins so that we can get to the middle of the virus where the genetic material is. And that genetic material is called RNA, all right? Now, after we put the buffer to digest the debris, the irrelevant stuff, we purify the genetic material. If we are doing it manually, we use centrifuges and ethanol, and there are a number of processes, okay? If it is automated, the machine does all this for us. In other words, when we put just one buffer in the tube, we put it in the machine, and the machine does the rest of the extraction. When it's manual, we do a number of steps in extraction. So we end up with the RNA, if it is there, the genetic material, and then we put that through a machine called a polymerase chain reaction machine or a thermocycler, okay? In the automated systems, the thermocyclers are big in size, but in the manual system, they are small things the size of a laptop, okay? And what the thermocycler does is this. Remember, maybe when we put the swab inside a person's throat, maybe we took out only 30 viruses. Very small number, very, very small, until you can easily detect them, okay? So what we want to do is we want to amplify that genetic material so that we have enough amount for us to see it. And if we are using a real-time thermocycler, we'll see as the amplification continues whether the amount of material is. There's a graph that will be climbing as the material is increasing. So what happens is that when we put in the thermocycler, we also put some reagents. Now, sometimes you hear people saying Jack Ma reagents.
Yes.
Or you hear them saying WHO reagents or Africa CDC reagents. Those ones are a mixture of salts, some other building blocks for genetic material, which we call bases, some primers and probes, and some buffers that make sure the pH is reasonable for the experiment to go on. But what the JACMA and the WHO reagents lacked was the extraction component, all right? The first part of digesting the debris from the virus that you are left, the genetic material. Those reagents did not come with that extraction component. The extraction reagents did not come. But anyway, those ones at least we had from other sources. So the polymerase chain reaction uses this system plus enzymes to increase the amount or to amplify the amount of genetic material until we can see it. So if we see it, then we say you are positive. If we don't see it after many cycles of amplification, then we say you are negative. And this is the result we give to the patient. You're positive or you're negative. Now, how do we do the results? If you are doing the manual testing, you read as the computer gives you results, you write them on a piece of paper, and then you check that everything is okay, and then you provide the results. If it's an automated system, the machine is connected to an information management system, and that system generates the results and generates your report forms. And my job as a laboratory person is just to check the report form and sign and say, I accept that this is the finding from the machine. So this is what has been happening.
Oh, so that is the whole process of sampling and going through testing, and it's quite interesting that you mentioned 30 viruses. Meaning that you can be able to, for COVID-19, you can be able to count how many viruses someone has in their system.
Actually, we can do that in the sense that the machine is able to detect a very small number of viruses in a sample. Very, very small number, like 20, 30, 100, 1,000. Viruses are very few in real life. They're very, very few, and the machine is. So in other words, if you're infected, the probability that we'll find out that you're infected is almost 100% if you're infected. Okay?
And you talked about the process of testing. You talked about manual system and the automated system. Yes. In most cases, how is it? Is it mostly manual, mostly automatic? When do you change from one system to the other?
Now, this is a market-driven sort of business. As people are research scientists, okay, first and foremost, and then sometimes there are specific needs from the community, from Kenyan population, that make us required to change our tact. When we are doing our own experiments, maybe just 5 hours, I just require to use a manual testing system because it's like you want to move from one home to another, and then you take the SGR with all the cabins for you to put your property and just have a few beds. Doesn't make sense, okay? You just take a car or pick up. So it's the same thing. So when we are just doing a few tests here and there, all we want to do is to do a few tests and therefore use a manual system. But there are some assignments we've been given by government that have required that us guys use the automated system. For instance, remember, we've been testing for HIV in terms of providing viral loads. And remember that up to 1.4 million or more Kenyans are infected, maybe 1.6 million. So if we want to do 1.6 million tests in 1 year or double that number, we have to use automated systems. And that's why we've invested in automated systems.
And as you invest in the automated systems, I remember that you were having an interview with one of our colleagues here in KBC, and you had talked about, how you have so many, you have the machinery that can be able to do all this work. And in Cambridge Labs, you have high-tech digital PCR machines. And you say that your machines can answer a lot of questions. But now, how many questions have you been able to get answers to through your own machines? Because you talked about how long your machines can answer questions like how long the virus has been in human beings, whether it has been longer in Kenya, more than the way it has been recorded in March. So have you been able to acquire possible solutions towards curbing the COVID-19 through getting the answers from these machines?
First of all, there are some things we've been asking ourselves, that we want answers to, even if the answers will make us feel good. But also as scientists, we want answers because it's interesting to do this kind of research and provide solutions, all right? For instance, we were told that the first person with coronavirus came into Kenya around 2nd, right, of March. Okay, this could be true, but as scientists, we usually go into our discussion with clean hands. That we may, in the course of our research work, discover that the person came into Kenya maybe on 5th March and not 2nd, for instance, or came in February, for instance. So, as a scientist, you must be open to finding out things. But there are some questions that are of interest to us that we are starting to work on now. And as scientists, we start that work by writing the research proposals. So they are reviewed by our peers so that the science is sound and the ethics are sound, and then we can do the work. We haven't gotten the proposals. The peer review of those proposals has not been completed yet. But in any case, our initial assignment right now is to provide the testing capacity. Once we are settled with the testing capacity, this is what we are going to do. We are going to do the science, maybe from maybe end of this month or from next month. And the things we'll be looking at will be, are people shedding virus after they have been discharged and been declared in? Are they still continuing to contaminate the environment and therefore posing a risk? We want to know that because that's a question out there in the international community, okay? The second question we want to ask is, in Kenya, how does this virus look like? Does it look like the one, genetically speaking, like the one in China or the one in Europe and so on? If we want to make vaccines, if they make them fast in Europe or in the United States, will those vaccines work here? They will only work here if the virus here looks like their virus. It doesn't look like their virus here. We want to know. If we are looking at making drugs for this virus, some of the drugs are based on how a virus looks like, okay? So if we want to make tests, like rapid tests for this virus, we must know how exactly it looks like. So we must check and using our sequencing machines and other things. There is a possibility that we'll go to blood samples that we collected in the past, if we get permission.
Okay.
Past means like 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, and we check whether they had this virus. If we discover that they had, then the whole story about how this one came from China and so on and so forth might even change, and then you'll even feel guilty that you are claiming on. But if we find that they didn't have any virus, then you will say, so it's actually possible that this virus came from the east and came this way. And then we'll also look at
so far from your research, from your findings, have you been able to establish that maybe the virus has been there longer than what we have been talking about?
First of all, from us, this is not research we have done because it's too early for us. It's too early. But people have already done this kind of work in other places, and this is what the thinking is. The current thinking in science from the evidence that has been collected by scientists, is that the virus entered into humans from animals. It seems to have come from bats, and the bats are specific to a certain cave in the Hubei province, where the Wuhan city is the capital. And those bats did not infect humans directly. It seems that they infected pangolins. Okay? And when they infected pangolins, when we look at the virus in pangolins, it looks almost the same as the one in humans, but with a kidogo difference. And that difference is what is making us ask ourselves, was there another animal in between?
Okay.
And it's possible there was another animal in between.
All right, so we'll be looking up with him. We just lost him, just some network interruptions. He is explaining, that process of, that whole process of how, researchers are coming up with ideas and solutions towards, curbing the COVID-19. Has it been there longer than we think? Has it been there for years? And it has just been discovered. Well, that is Professor Matilu Mwau, the Deputy Director for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, giving us his take from Cambridge. He says that they have the machines, they have the ability to do the testing, they have the ability to do the sampling, and they're still working on getting more tests being done on Kenyans. So, Professor Makau, thank you very much for giving us your take on that. As we continue with this conversation, you're telling us that
yes,
it is possible that there was another animal in between here. Just finish up that before we continue on to the next thing.
So it is possible that there was an animal between pangolins and humans.
Okay.
And that animal, we will find it if it is there. If it was there, we will find it. But there is some evidence that this particular coronavirus was in West Africa in humans as early as 1830.
Okay.
1830. Not 1930, 1830. So this is research other people are doing, but our time is coming because this virus came to us much later than to other countries. And we will have our findings, and then we will share as an international community.
Based on your findings, have you been able to discover cases of how the virus spreads? For example, we have cases of people who have succumbed to because of the virus, 40 cases of deaths here in Kenya. Based on your findings, have you been able to determine whether it can come or be spread from the dead to the living?
Okay. We haven't, but I can tell you what others have found. And the guidelines that the WHO has provided that is based on what others have found. The most infectious viruses you can think about are like the viral hemorrhagic fevers, like Ebola or Marburg. Those ones, if you touch a dead body with your finger, finished. Now, we also know that WHO classifies pandemic flu, like those H1N1s and so on, as in that infectious bracket. Now, we are not very clear in our minds about how infectious coronavirus is in dead bodies. We are still doing that work, but WHO, out of an abundance of caution, seems to suggest that we should treat that body with the same care that we treat when we are looking at a person who has died from pandemic flu. And this is the reason why you are seeing people are getting buried in body bags, and even you are not very keen to do a postmortem so that you don't contaminate and infect other people who will be at risk even of death, all right? But I want to remind you something, and this one is something I have to say. Remember, when HIV came into the country, we had the same level of knowledge as we are having now for coronavirus. Not very much. And then so we said, oh, people who have HIV need to be buried in body bags and so on. But as we accumulated the scientific evidence, we got to a point where we said, you should just bury a person who died of HIV normally as you do anybody else. And this is what happened. So do not be surprised if one day in the future we give you new guidelines. But these guidelines on burying coronavirus victims will be based on the evidence we collect with the time. At this moment, you don't have sufficient evidence, and for that reason, you must practice an abundance of caution.
All right, Professor, as we bring this discussion to a close, just briefly, we have a comment here by a viewer. This is someone, he's asking, how long does the virus stay in the dead?
In the dead?
Yes.
We do not know, but We do not know, but probably a very short period of time, because this virus needs cells for it to survive. And you know, when you die, your cells decompose very quickly. So maybe a very short period of time.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. That is Professor Matilu Mwau joining us live. He is the Deputy Director for the Kenya Medical Research Institute. Thank you very much for finding time to join us this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. Remember, we are live on Facebook. At KBC Channel 1 is our Facebook page. We are live there. If at all you prefer social media, the Twitter handle is also up and running. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya. Tag me at Ramaguko, at Jane Wambois, my colleague's handle, at Doreen Range. These are questions that Kenyans are asking in regards to the COVID-19 cases. Jane, I don't know what you say about this, but it's quite interesting how far Kenya is going in terms of research when it comes to curbing the COVID-19.
Absolutely, and the fact that, actually, I think it was over the weekend in the dailies where they were saying, one of the front lines was about how Kenya is actually coming up on a global map when it comes to trying to find solutions when it comes to this fight against COVID-19. And the fact that we can hear what goes into it is very encouraging and helps even me as a Kenyan to, be more encouraged and stay in the know and know what is happening when this is done, when they take the samples, this is what it goes through. So it's encouraging to see what goes on in the lab.
And on some of the way they dressed up themselves, it's like they're going to the moon.
Going to the moon.
Yeah. I love that kind of analogy because I could picture it in my mind. The way they put on all those gear, those gears, in all white. We were able to see how, the sampling takes place in the labs. We were able to see those shots from home. This is in regards to how the Kenya Medical Research Institute is going, in coming up with possible solutions to curb this COVID-19. Jen, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel.
There definitely is, because actually even today in the dailies, there was a story about how different countries are employing the use of technology in the fight against COVID-19. Well, in some countries, they're using drones to scare away people and keep them in the house because people are not following the directives. But some are actually just employing the use of technology. Like in the US, there's a story about a 17-year-old who came up with, I think he has a platform in which he can be able to track everyone who has been, who has contracted coronavirus or is suspected to have coronavirus. And this keeps a proper database. And so far, over 500 million people have visited this website. And how it works is that, they give you a monitor, which is similar to a wristwatch. And that wristwatch tracks oxygen levels in your blood. In case they drop, they're able to send signals to the phone, and the phone, it transmits this information to the site, which ultimately gets to the doctor, and they're able to dispatch an ambulance to where you are if you're not able to get to a hospital. And all this is just supposed to help bring COVID-19 to an end.
And looking at that, is it possible, because that app is quite interesting, I wonder, is it possible for someone to not know that the temperature is rising, and because that wristwatch records how the changes in temperature is, as it transfers that data to the app. So when someone's body temperature changes, and the wristwatch records that, this is in regards to technology and research, how people are coming up with possible solutions. So does it mean that at some point the medical practitioners can get to you before you even know that, hey, that there's a possibility that your body was having some changes that at some point you are not actually noticing, that you are unaware of, but because of technology, it records that and gives the necessary data to the health practitioners? I don't know if that's the correct interpretation of that.
I think that's where we are headed, because it transmits these signals in real time. When your oxygen levels are going down, when you get to that stage, one of the symptoms, severe symptoms of coronavirus is that, you get to have difficulty in breathing. That means your oxygen levels go down. And when they go down, this wristwatch is able to detect that, ultimately sending signals to the phone, then the phone transmits to the site, and then the site, the doctors are able to track this, and if you have your phone with you, they're able to track you and find you wherever you are.
Through your GPS.
Yes, of course, through your gadget. If you're not able to go to the medical facility, they come to you. And I think that is also a step in the right direction, because still, This is in today's daily. Even at the University of Southern California, the Institute of Creative Technologies, the scientists are also now developing virtual humans.
Ah,
yes, they are developing virtual humans who can help doctors and nurses respond to the pandemic, thus bringing down the number of doctors who are exposed and nurses who are exposed to patients who are showing signs and symptoms of this coronavirus, and also for patients who are exhibiting mild to moderate signs and symptoms. And for hospitals that don't have the capacity to hold all these patients, they're able to send them home but still track them and keep all their information up to date and know when they need to go to the hospital.
I love that, you know, as Kenyans, we are coming up with possible solutions with regards to curbing the coronavirus or the COVID-19. I love that. I love what the deputy director had just said for Kemri. You know, he said that in as much as, yes, people say that the virus is mutating, that it is changing, but at the end of the day, it can even work for good, even when it comes to coming up with possible solutions. Just to sample up a few comments here, I'm seeing Mwanawa Mutamaki is saying, watching us from Gilgil. We have Scholar Nyakachi saying, good morning, tuned in from Mombasa. Shiko is saying, good morning, tuned in from Eldoret. We have Danny Boy Santos is watching us from Muranga. And we have Nico Sun City is saying, good morning. Running in from Makadara, Nairobi. All right, so many people getting the information as we continue. Remember, we are live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm seeing Liz is also watching us from Nairobi. Remember, this is in regards to the information that is necessary for you to know. The tips being given right here from the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation to you watching us on how you can be able to prevent the COVID-19 from spreading, self-isolation, you know, social distancing, use hand sanitizers. I don't know where mine is. Yeah, it is down here. You know, use hand sanitizers as you continue to, you know, go on with your day-to-day duties and make sure that, you know, you curb the COVID-19 virus from spreading from one person to the other. Well, moving on, we still have yet another interview coming up in a bit. Jane, I don't know what that interview is about, but maybe you can give us a glimpse on what it is that you'll be having in a few moments from now.
Yes, it's all about still the situation that we are in, the COVID-19 pandemic, and some of the ripple effects that we are seeing as a result of it. And it's a sad situation, but there has been a noted increase in the number of sexual and gender-based violence cases that are being reported in Kenya, in Africa, and the world over. And it's sad because this is not the first time this situation is happening. Looking at previous pandemics that have cut across the globe, whenever there's any crisis in any country, sexual and gender-based violence cases always spike up. That has always been the cases, and in most cases, it is women who face, who have it harder as opposed to our male counterparts. And you know, the fact that it has been on a rise has been a cause of concern for so many people, and that is a conversation that we want to have to just try and understand what we can do, starting from here in Kenya, here in Nairobi, because I will be letting you know, there was a report that was put out by the CJ when he was giving the status update report on the judiciary. He did mention that they have seen an increase by 35% on the number of sexual offences cases that have been reported here in Nairobi alone.
Wow.
35% in Nairobi alone. That is a cause of concern. And the saddest bit, Ram, is that, you know, the perpetrators that are involved are either the guardians or a close relative or somebody that these children, especially children, know and trust.
And I'm taking it back to just wonder, some scenarios or some cases, some problems should bring us together. Even as, you know, in the family level, some of these issues should bring the families together. Broken families, families where people have issues between, you know, the mom and the dad, the father and the mother, should be able to come together because of some of these problems. They should not drift us apart. But I'm taking it back to just wonder, is it possible that this COVID-19 can make us to build our families? In regards to how these cases are increasing, gender-based violence, I believe that at some point we need to change our mentality.
All right, so we're going to be having that discussion in a bit. So any questions that you may be having in regards to this, send them through. 20154 is the number. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya at General Boy. I will be addressing them in a moment, so do stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Next on Corner.
Miller is applying for work.
Why are you sabotaging her?
Well, we want her in our camp. She's the one who's going to get us that folder and much more.
Going to get to the bottom of this.
If they were killed and you go on asking questions, you're in serious danger.
I was not born yesterday.
I'd love to be a part of that.
You, if you ever do this behind my back, I'll ban you for 1 month.
The old job is still available. I know how much you enjoyed it.
On the next episode of Elena's Ghost.
When certain people who you already know find out that you're going to be set free, there will be reactions, there will be nervousness, and you know who will be the target, Rebecca.
So Rebecca Haran was acquitted of all charges. What does that mean, Tulio?
The next time that you pull out a gun to kill Eduardo or anyone else around here, you will be leaving my house. Do you understand?
If Eduardo discovers that Elena lied to him about something so important to him as his child, well, then that would really upset him.
Yo, remember, ukitaka to stay safe from coronavirus, lazima ufuate hizi steps. 1. Osha mikono kila time for 20 seconds. Hata unaweza imba happy birthday mara mbili. 2. Usishike uso, macho na mapua yako, especially kama hujaosha mikono. 3. Ukitaka kucough, utumie tissue alafu utupe kwa dustbin ama ucough kwa elbow. 4. Avoid kuenda mahali kuna watu wengi ama kusalimia mtu na kuhug mtu. In case usikie uko mgonjwa, please ambia parents wako ama guardians wako. Let's all stay safe.
Welcome back. Thank you for keeping it Good Morning Kenya. Now, to continue with this discussion, this whole issue of sexual and gender-based violence having spiked during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we have two guests joining us right now to help us with this discussion. We have with us, joining us right now, we have Mercy Chege, who is the programs manager working with Plan International, and of course, Alberta Wambua, who is the executive director of Henderson Violence Recovery Center. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jen.
All right, now let's just get started with this discussion, and let's start with the basics for the benefit of our viewer. You know, one might be wondering, what are these sexual and gender-based violence? How do they present themselves? So when it comes to a definition of what a sexual offense constitutes, maybe we could start with you, Alberta. What does a sexual offense constitute?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jen, and thank you for having me on the show. So gender-based violence is any violence meted on anyone based on their gender, whether male or female, and it can take different forms. Of course, again, it also has a lot of power relations.
Yes.
Power is involved. Usually there's somebody who has power over the other. So there are different forms of gender-based violence. we have sexual violence, we have physical violence, we have economical, we have psychological violence, and then we also have violence that is what we call harmful cultural practices. So, for example, female genital mutilation and circumcision, child marriages, forced marriages, forced male circumcision. So there are different forms of gender-based violence.
All right.
So domestic violence can sometimes is also called intimate partner violence.
All right. Now, let me come to you, Mercy. They say that during times of crisis and pandemics, cases to do with sexual and gender-based violence always spike up, and it's mostly against women. Is there truth to it, and why do you think this is so?
Thank you, Jane. Yes, there's a lot of truth to that. And the reason is because the society in which we live, you realize that most of the things that are supposed to be done at home are usually done by women because of the stereotyping that we have. So in a situation like this, women are supposed to make sure that there is food on the table, that there is water for bathing, for drinking, and like now, water for washing hands frequently. All the household chores are usually left on women.
Yeah.
So sometimes this is not possible and the woman cannot be able to provide, and the men are locked up in the houses, and the places where they are working are no longer accessible, and even if they are accessible, just for a few hours. So most of them are on half pay or even just a stipend for the day. Then you realize that gender-based violence increases, and it takes a lot of forms. For example, in some cases, we have parents telling their girls, can you go out and make sure you come back with a packet of unga? That's what we call transactional sex. So what is the girl supposed to do? Because they have to come back with a packet of unga. And the boys are also sent out to go and do anything, and they get into crime because they have to bring a packet of unga back home. So I think the dynamics of the lockdown right now is not just about the disease itself. There are a lot of things that are happening at home. Families that have never been together because the father is working elsewhere, the mother is working elsewhere. Now they are together and they are learning how to stay together. And it's not easy.
Now, looking at some of the measures that have been put in place by the Ministry of Health, of course, and the government, the dusk-to-dawn curfew, we have the cessation of movement between Nairobi for the 4 counties that have been highlighted, and some of all these other measures that have been put in place. How are they impacting negatively on some of these vulnerable categories that have reporting this increased number of cases of sexual and gender-based violence cases? Alberta?
Yes. So one of the ways that it's impacting negatively, of course, would be then the limitation in terms of paid work, for example. So then the women and girls and all the vulnerable groups are not able to access their daily work, like the casual laborers. They're not able to go to the workspaces and get to get some money.
Yeah.
Again, we also have the domestic or the social norms that we have. It's the women and girls who take care of the children, for example, the domestic work. So again, now children are home, there's homeschooling, then you have to do homeschooling, there's the normal work, there's the stress level of, what exactly is COVID-19, what's going to happen to us, are we safe? But again, most importantly, is also the access to services, and not just services for gender-based violence in case they're violated, but also sexual reproductive health. So you have women and girls and the vulnerable not being able to access services because all their attention and diversion has been to response mechanisms towards prevention of COVID-19, for example.
Okay.
So you have, for example, if women and girls are violated, they're not able to access the health facilities, and because then resources has been diverted. Security has also been diverted into the curfew and the cessations. So then again, that also brings a lot of insecurity. Women and girls are vulnerable who are, for example, meant to get family planning, or being able just to go and give back. Yesterday, I know of 2 cases, for example, of women who are not able to access facilities to be able to get, proper deliveries done to them. So those are some of the restrictions and negative impacts.
Now, Mercy, let me come to you. Now, looking at the unavailability of some of these essential services that our young girls might need, and for some, maybe, the safe houses that were there that they could run to whenever they felt threatened or they were under such situations, what options or rather what protective systems do you think the government and even the Ministry of Health can put in place to make sure that they're also still taken care of during this time?
Thank you, Jane. I think one of the things that the government needs to do is just to make sure that the vulnerable families are identified and at least they have food on the table. Because I think that most of the violence being experienced right now is because we don't have the basic needs. And Jen, you recall that even before COVID, we had reached a stage as a country where we were seeing so many cases of suicide, so many cases of homicide, so many cases of violence against men and against women because of some small things. You know, it's like the resilience of Kenyans psychologically and emotionally had already been eroded for one reason or another, even before COVID. Now you can imagine that has been compounded by the fact that now you can't even put it on the table. You have to be locked down the whole day. You have to be home by 7. There's so many things. So if the government would make sure that the vulnerable families have food on the table and they have access to clean water, and at least they can be able to move around for some time during the day and look for work, I think that would be very important. The message to the employers, please do not lay down your work, do not lay off your workers if it is not absolutely necessary. You can let them work fewer hours in a day, and maybe even pay them on a weekly basis so that they are able to cater for the basic needs. So I think it's just the working together with the private sector so that jobs can still remain and people can even get some money to buy food, and those families that are absolutely needy should be identified and they should be supported. The other thing that I would want to mention, like Agatha is saying, we might think that access to sanitary pads is something that it's not so much, but women are really suffering, girls are really suffering because they cannot access pads. And the old saying of the sex for pads, it's now back more than ever. So you can imagine if somebody has to have sex with someone else so that they can access pads, so that they can pay rent, so that they can access food and water, and we are preventing COVID. You can imagine the risk that they are putting themselves and every one of us in. So the vulnerable families, I would say, need to be identified, and they are given the basic needs, or they are given something to do. For example, just to give an example of what Plan is doing in Kibera, some of the girls that we have been working with, single mothers, young mothers below the age of 21, are now the ones who are manning our hand washing station. And that gives them, like 500 shillings in a day, and they don't have to have sex with anyone. They don't have to be violated or become vulnerable so that they can be able to put food on their table. So some of those creative ways of keeping women and girls busy and earning would prevent a lot of the issues that we are seeing right now.
And Alberto, I'd also like to hear from you about the same, when it comes to gender-sensitive responses, protection systems that need to be employed during this time, because we don't know how long we're going to be in this crisis, that are going to be effective for the long run to ensure the progress that we have made is not hampered.
Mm-hmm. So yes, so one, for example, is when we're even providing that aid or that support to the vulnerable, to the women and girls, one, we have to look at their needs. So what exactly are their needs? And some studies and some countries have realized that as opposed to giving the women and girls the commodities, is giving them a cash voucher, so that then, one, in terms of dignity, in terms of their lining up. Just the other day, we lost 2 women in Kibera when they were getting some food aid. So are they able then, as Mercy says, are they able also to engage themselves, and just be able to get what exactly they need? Again, it's to make the services, accessible for them. So if the curfew is at 7 p.m., so you can imagine if I have to go to a hospital that's really far, get services, come back. So how are we going then to make the services really reachable to the women and girls? And also have, for example, the exceptions of, are these women also able to go for services at night, for example, in case they're doing delivery or they have a certain emergency? Mm-hmm. Again, a lot of prevention and a lot of mental wellness. It's also really needed. Yeah. And this does not have to be physical, can also be online, for example. We can have online toll-free numbers that women, girls, vulnerable can always call. And it's not just for the affected, abused, but also just everyone, including myself. There's so much change in everything on our day-to-day work, and there's all the stresses we've talked about, from pay cuts to loss of jobs, to the curfews, to uncertainty with the COVID, to, not homeschooling and everything else. So there need to be some psychological, mental wellness, platform that people then can also engage in, whether on one-on-one, and not just for the public, but the public, the abused, but also the frontline workers, the frontline healthcare workers. It's also really a toll for them, and not just the health ones, but also the ones in the security sector or any sector that is really engage in this particular period. Again, so a lot of prevention work, and not just on gender-based violence, a lot of letting families know the little things that they can do, for example, within their home setting. People, I mean, we've never been home for this long. We never had, as Mercy says, all of us together. It's like getting to know your family members again, which is a good thing. Yeah. But sometimes we lack on exactly, but we don't know how do we engage? How do we really make ourselves engage and not bored and slip into depression? How these interactive ways that we can get to learn from each other. And this is the space, like today I was reading, one of my friends was saying, this is the time to talk to our children about sexual violence, you know, that they can handle. What they can't handle is the actual violence. So these spaces that you can use to discuss child protection, to discuss sexual violence, to discuss positive masculinity, to be role models for our children. I mean, there's so much we can do, from vegetable gardening to there's all this, but we don't know how. So maybe those are the conversations that we need to have. But again, we're in good direction. I've seen lots of education programs, for example, on KBC going on.
All right. Now, before we get to close this conversation, you know, dealing with when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence cases, and especially where our children are involved, you find stigmatization and discrimination still remain to be a very big problem. Now that our children are at home, we're hearing cases of defilement, and most of these cases involve, you know, guardians and immediate caregivers and relatives. How then can we just try and deal with discrimination and stigmatization so that our children can also, you know, speak out about this? Very briefly. Let me start with you, Mercy.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. I think it is good for the public to know that help is available, and it's supported by some of the government agencies like the Department of Children Services and Childline Kenya. They are running the toll-free line 116, and you just need to dial 116 and you get a counselor on the other end who will direct you to the services that you need, including referring you to a hospital. One of the closest referrals that we have, especially in Nairobi, is where Alberta is the executive director at the Gender Violence Recovery Center, and you'll be able to get support from there. Again, we have 1195 by the National Gender and Equality Commission. So you can get counseling there, you can get referrals, including going to hospital and where you can get help. But I think above all, it's the counseling that is needed. Even in the midst of COVID, people need to know that life has to go on. Yeah. And it's not just about avoiding contracting the disease. It's also keeping yourself well, because there's another phase of life that is coming.
Okay.
And the children need to know how to keep themselves safe. And Jane, one of the things that probably we are not talking about right now, we are all at home. The middle class and the upper class have a big problem with online abuse of children.
Okay.
Children are being sexually abused online, and parents need to be aware of that, so that they can talk about safe internet
usage at home. And we're going to be continuing with this discussion in not too long. But let me get your word also, your final word in regards to this, Alberta, when it comes to how we can deal with stigma and discrimination, especially where our children are involved, and knowing that they can find avenues to actually talk about what is happening to them in secret.
So one, it's breaking the norm of not discussing sex with our children. Of course, we discuss age-appropriate conversations. And the fact that we don't discuss it with our children, that they're not open to come and tell us in case they're violated, or we don't have platforms or avenues where we can tell them this and this is wrong, or these are the safe touches, or no one should touch you like this, and no one should do this to you. So we need to start having those conversations and openly with these children. So the stigma stops when we face the issue and discuss it, not just with our children, but also among ourselves. So yes, there's help, but again, as much as there's help, there's also the prevention bit. So there are certain programs, as much as we have the educational programs, we also need to have the life skills, or rather programs that then we engage about. And it's not just about violence, it's about what our bodies, what our body changes, what can we say, you know, the positive side of our body, so that then it's not about shame, it's not about you know, what is appropriate, you know, and as Mercy says, we are here with all the spaces and internet, and the children can have access to all this. But for them to be able to be assertive and to be able to discern and know that this is wrong, you know, this is not the kind of content I need to listen to. And also parents to also be responsible enough. And it does not mean that just because it's cartoons, it's okay. Some of the cartoons and conversations inside there are really, you know, questionable. So it's about those conversations and just openly discuss child, you know, issues in our body, reproduction, and everything else.
All right. It's about opening the channel of communication with our children, especially during this time when they are at home. And so much is happening. So many cases of, sexual offenses cases are being reported. And so many of them are involving children. And this the perpetrators are said to be people who are living with them, people who they trust, relatives. So we need to open this channel of communication with our children early enough so that they can get to a point where they can talk to you as a parent when they are faced with such situations. Now, we're going to be continuing with this discussion, just try and understand what more we can do to protect the vulnerable in society during this time so that it doesn't get worse for them, but it only gets better and we don't lose track or get off course in regards to the progress that we have made so far when it comes to dealing with the sexual and gender-based violence. Well, with that, we want to put a cap on today's program. Thank you so much for staying with us. We have been speaking with Mercy Chege, who is the programs manager at Plan International, and Alberta Wambua, who is the executive director at the Henderson Violence and Recovery Center. Be sure to join us again tomorrow morning right here on Good Morning Kenya for other fantastic discussions that are all about informing you, entertaining you, empowering you, and keeping you educated. In as much as we are in a pandemic, we still keep you up to date. My name is Jane Wambui. See you tomorrow. God bless.